Have you ever looked back at old motorcycle photos and wondered what riders were thinking? You know, those mods that seemed so cool at the time, but now make you cringe harder than watching your high school yearbook photos? Well, today we're counting down 10 forgotten motorcycle trends that looked absolutely ridiculous in hindsight. From chrome overload to those infamous spike accessories that turned bikes into rolling medieval weapons, we're diving deep into the vault of motorcycle fashion disasters. So, buckle up, because this ride through motorcycle history's most questionable choices is going to be bumpy. But first, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more trips down memory lane's most embarrassing moments. Number 10. Excessive chrome kits. Remember when chrome was king? Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, if your bike didn't blind oncoming traffic, you weren't trying hard enough. Chrome everything was the motto. Chrome engine covers, chrome exhaust pipes, chrome handlebars, chrome foot pegs, chrome bolts, chrome nuts, chrome washers, even chrome valve stem caps. It was like someone took a perfectly good motorcycle and dipped it in liquid mirror. The obsession started innocently enough. A little chrome here and there actually looked classy. But then things got out of hand. Really out of hand. Riders would spend thousands of dollars chroming parts that nobody would ever see. The underside of the fuel tank? Chrome it. The inside of the air filter housing? Chrome it. The kickstand spring? You better believe that got chromed too. The worst part wasn't even the cost. It was the weight. All that chrome plating added serious pounds to bikes that were already heavy. Harley-Davidson riders were particularly guilty of this trend. Some bikes gained 50 to 70 pounds just from chrome accessories. That's like carrying an extra passenger made entirely of shiny metal. Performance suffered, fuel economy tanked. But hey, at least you could use your gas tank as a mirror to check your teeth. And then there was the maintenance nightmare. Chrome needs constant polishing to keep its shine. Miss a week, and it starts to spot. Miss a month, and it begins to pit. Miss a season, and you're looking at thousands in re-chroming costs. Riders spent more time polishing than riding. Weekend warriors became weekend polishers. The garage smelled permanently of chrome polish and regret. The trend finally died when riders realized they were spending fortune on something that actually made their bikes worse. Modern motorcycles embrace function over flash. Black finishes, matte colors, and actual performance parts took over. Today, excessive chrome is the motorcycle equivalent of a mullet haircut. Sure, it was popular once, but now it just screams, I peaked in 1998. Looking back, the chrome obsession was motorcycle culture's disco phase. Loud, flashy, and completely over the top. And just like disco, once it died, nobody wanted to admit they were ever into it. Those chrome-covered bikes now sit in garages covered in dust and shame, monuments to a time when more was always better, even when it definitely wasn't. Number 9. Super tall Ape Hangers. Ape Hangers started as a practical solution for tall riders who needed higher handlebars, but somewhere along the way, things went completely insane. We're talking handlebars so tall that riders looked like they were perpetually surrendering to the police. Arms straight up in the air. Shoulders screaming in protest, blood draining from hands faster than water through a sieve. The evolution was gradual but disturbing. First came 12-inch apes, not too bad, then 16 inches, getting sketchy, then 20 inches, now we're in dangerous territory. But it didn't stop there. Oh no, some riders went for 24, 30, even 36-inch ape hangers. At that point, you're not riding a motorcycle. You're operating a medieval torture device that happens to have wheels. The physics alone should have stopped this trend. When your hands are above your heart for extended periods, circulation becomes a real problem. Riders reported their hands going numb after just 20 minutes, fingers would tingle, grip strength disappeared. Some riders had to pull over every half hour just to shake, feeling back into their arms. Imagine trying to make an emergency stop when you can't feel your brake lever. It's not confidence-inspiring. Control was another casualty of the super tall ape hanger trend. Try making a quick turn with your arms stretched above your head. It's like trying to steer while doing jumping jacks. The leverage is all wrong. The response time is slower. And forget about counter steering at speed. Your body position is so compromised that basic motorcycle dynamics go out the window. Then, there were the legal issues. Many states had laws limiting handlebar height. California said no higher than shoulder level. Florida restricted them to shoulder height when seated. But enforcement was spotty, and riders pushed boundaries anyway. Some would install quick-release systems to lower their bars when they saw cops. Others just took their chances and collected tickets like baseball cards. The death of super tall Ape Hangers came from a simple realization. They made riding miserable. Long trips were torture sessions. Short trips weren't much better. The cool factor lasted about 5 minutes. After that, it was all pain and poor control. Modern riders prefer bars that actually work with human anatomy, not against it. Comfort and control beat looking like a chrome-plated scarecrow any day. Today, reasonable Ape Hangers still exist. 8 to 12 inches can actually be comfortable for some riders. But those extreme skyscrapers, they're relegated to old photos and cautionary tales. A reminder that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, especially when that something turns your motorcycle into an orthopedic nightmare. Number 8. Extended swing arms. The stretch swing arm trend came from drag racing, where longer wheelbases meant better straight line stability. Makes sense on a quarter-mile strip, makes absolutely no sense on a street bike that needs to turn occasionally. But that didn't stop thousands of sport bike riders from stretching their swing arms to comical proportions. It started with modest extensions, 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, still somewhat functional. But then, the one-upmanship began. 8 inches, 12 inches, 16 inches. Some bikes had swing arms so long they looked like metallic centipedes. The rear wheel was in a different zip code than the front. Parking spaces couldn't contain them. U-turns became 3-point turns, or 5-point turns, or just giving up and around the block. The handling consequences were immediate and severe. Motorcycles are designed with specific wheelbases for good reason. Extend that wheelbase, and you destroy the bike's ability to change direction. Corners that used to be fun became terrifying ordeals. The bike wanted to go straight, only straight, forever straight. Riders had to plan their routes to avoid any turn sharper than a highway on-ramp. But wait, it gets worse. These extended swing arms didn't just ruin handling, they also looked ridiculous, especially on 600cc sport bikes that were never meant for drag racing. It was like putting drag slicks on a Mazda Miata. Sure, you could do it. But why would you? The proportions were all wrong. The bike looked broken, like someone had grabbed the front and back and pulled until something gave. The maintenance headaches were numerous. Longer chains were expensive and hard to find. They stretched faster and wore out quicker. The extended swing arm put weird stresses on the frame. Bearings wore prematurely. Sprockets needed constant adjustment. And good luck finding a motorcycle stand that could accommodate your stretched out monster. Most riders ended up fabricating their own equipment. The trend peaked around 2008 and died shortly after. Riders finally admitted what everyone else already knew. Extended swing arms on street bikes were pointless. They made the bike worse at everything except going straight. And how often do you need to do quarter-mile runs on your way to work? Modern sport bikes celebrate agility and cornering prowess, the exact opposite of what extended swing arms provided. Today, stretch bikes are museum pieces, reminders of when style completely divorced itself from function. They show up at bike shows as curiosities. Remember when people actually rode these things? Veterans ask, shaking their heads. The answer is yes, unfortunately. And the lower back pain from trying to muscle those things through corners still lingers. Number 7. Fake race replicas. Nothing says I don't actually race quite like a street bike covered in fake sponsor stickers and race numbers. This trend turned parking lots into pretend paddocks. Every guy with a sport bike suddenly became a MotoGP rider, at least in their own minds. In reality, they were accountants and insurance adjusters playing dress-up with very expensive toys. The starter pack was predictable. First, add race numbers to your fairings. Number 46 was popular because Valentino Rossi. Never mind that you've never been on a track. Next, slap on sponsor decals. Monster Energy, Red Bull, Yoshimura. Doesn't matter if they've never heard of you, then add some fake carbon fiber stickers, because real carbon fiber was expensive, but looking fast was priceless. The most embarrassing part was the knee sliders, those plastic pucks that real racers use when dragging knees through corners. Street riders would bolt them onto their leathers and never use them. Brand new knee sliders after 5 years of riding. still had the warning labels attached. It was like wearing a Super Bowl ring when you've never played football. Everyone knew you were faking it. Track day stickers were another dead giveaway. Riders would buy old tech inspection stickers from eBay and cover their bikes with them. Laguna Seca 2005. Thunderhill 2007. But ask them about their lap times and they'd change the subject. Ask about their favorite corner at the track, and they'd suddenly remember an urgent appointment. The motorcycle media didn't help. Every sport bike magazine featured race replicas. Every advertisement showed bikes on tracks with riders in full racing crouch. The message was clear: your street bike should look like a race bike, even if the closest you got to racing was splitting lanes on the highway. The fantasy sold better than reality. Then came the mechanical stupidity. Riders would remove mirrors because race bikes don't have mirrors. They'd install track-only tires that were dangerous in the rain. They'd replace stock exhausts with straight-through race pipes that were illegally loud. All in the name of looking like a racer while never actually racing. It was cosplay with catastrophic potential. The trend died as track days became more accessible and affordable. Suddenly, wannabe racers could actually try racing, and most discovered they weren't very good at it. Those fake sponsor stickers seemed a lot less cool after being lapped by a teenager on a 20-year-old Ninja 250. Reality has a way of crushing fantasies, especially at 100 miles per hour. Modern riders are more honest about their intentions. Street bikes look like street bikes. Track bikes look like track bikes. And everyone's okay with that. The fake race replica trend is remembered as a time when image mattered more than ability. When looking fast was more important than being fast. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Number 6. Neon underglow lighting. The Fast and Furious franchise has a lot to answer for, but perhaps its greatest crime against motorcycles was popularizing neon, underglow. For a dark period in the early 2000s, every sport bike looked like a rolling rave. Green, blue, purple, pink. Sometimes all colors at once, cycling through the rainbow like a discount nightclub. The installation process alone should have been a warning sign, drilling holes in your fairings to run wires, zip tying LED strips to your frame, hiding battery packs and control boxes wherever they'd fit. By the time you were done, your bike had more wiring than a Christmas tree. And about as much class. The safety arguments were hilarious. It makes me more visible at night, riders would claim. Sure, visible as a target for mockery. Other drivers weren't watching out for you. They were trying to figure out if you were a motorcycle or an escaped arcade game. The lights were more distracting than helpful, like trying to increase pedestrian safety by setting yourself on fire. Then came the endless customization options. Solid colors, flashing patterns, music synchronization. Yes, some riders actually had their underglow pulse to their stereo's bass. Because nothing says serious motorcyclist like having your bike dance to techno music at red lights. The control boxes had more buttons than a TV remote. Mode, speed, brightness, pattern, color. It was overwhelming and completely unnecessary. Law enforcement wasn't amused. Many states banned underglow lighting outright, others restricted certain colors. Blue was often illegal because it could be confused with police lights. Red was problematic for similar reasons. Riders would spend hundreds on lighting kits only to get tickets every time they turned them on. The cost-to-ticket ratio was astronomical. The maintenance was another nightmare. LED strips would fall off, water would get into connections, wires would melt on hot exhaust pipes. The constant vibration of riding would shake things loose. Half the lights would stop working within months. The other half would flicker like a dying fluorescent bulb. Your badass street racer now looked like a malfunctioning casino sign. The trend mercifully died around 2010. Riders realized that neon underglow was the motorcycle equivalent of a tribal tattoo. Seemed cool at the time, but aged like milk in the sun. Modern bikes embrace subtle lighting, functional LED headlights, clean turn signals, maybe some accent lighting in the gauges. But underglow, that's been relegated to the Hall of Shame, right next to flame paint jobs and skull valve caps. Today, seeing a bike with underglow is like finding a time capsule, a reminder of when taste took a vacation and left questionable decisions in charge. Those LED strips now gather dust in garage drawers waiting to be thrown away, but kept as reminders of younger, dumber days. Number 5. Oversized rear tires. Bigger is better, right? Wrong, so very wrong. The fat tire trend took motorcycles and turned them into two-wheeled monster trucks. 300mm rear tires. 330, 360. Some custom builders went even wider. It was like someone looked at a motorcycle and thought, you know what this needs? A steamroller for a back wheel. The physics problems were immediate. Motorcycles lean to turn, wide tires don't like to lean. See the conflict? These oversized rear tires fought against every attempt to corner. The contact patch was all wrong, the profile was too flat, riders had to muscle their bikes through turns like wrestling an angry bear. A bear made of rubber and bad decisions. The cost was astronomical. A standard rear tire might cost $200. These monster tires cost $800, $1,000, $1,500 for the really ridiculous ones, and they wore out faster because of the extra weight and stress. Plus, you needed custom wheels, custom swing arms, custom fenders. By the time you were done, you'd spent the price of a small car on making your bike handle worse. The look was supposed to be aggressive, masculine, powerful. Instead, it looked like someone had a bicycle pump and didn't know when to stop. The proportions were completely wrong. Huge rear tire, normal front tire. It was like skipping leg day, but in reverse. The bike looked unbalanced, cartoonish, like a Hot Wheels toy designed by someone who'd never seen an actual motorcycle. Performance suffered in every measurable way. Acceleration was slower because of the increased rotating mass. Braking distances increased, fuel economy plummeted, the extra weight and drag turned decent bikes into sluggish barges. Sport bikes with fat tires were particularly sad, like putting sumo wrestler legs on a marathon runner. Sure, they're impressive, but they're not helping you win any races. Chain alignment became a recurring nightmare. Standard chains weren't wide enough, custom offset chains were needed, sprockets had to be modified. The whole drivetrain was compromised to accommodate a tire that offered no real benefits. It was engineering backwards, starting with aesthetics and forcing everything else to adapt. The trend peaked around 2009 and died as riders rediscovered the joy of motorcycles that actually worked. Tire manufacturers started focusing on performance over size. Compound technology improved. Riders realized that a properly sized tire with good grip beat a massive tire with poor dynamics every single time. Modern motorcycles have appropriately sized tires. Engineers spend years determining optimal tire dimensions. Turns out they know more than Joey from the custom shop, who thinks bigger automatically equals better. The fat tire trend is now remembered as a time when common sense took a holiday and left ego in charge. Those oversized tires now serve as very expensive garden planters. Number 4. Spike accessories. Nothing says I make poor life choices quite like covering your motorcycle in spikes. Spiked bar ends, spiked grips, spiked levers, spiked foot pegs, spiked valve caps. Some riders turned their bikes into medieval weapons that happened to have engines. It was like Mad Max met a craft store and nobody said stop. The safety hazards were obvious to everyone except the riders installing them. Spiked bar ends were basically spears pointed at other vehicles. In a minor collision, they turned from decoration to weapon. Spiked grips destroyed gloves and occasionally hands. Spiked foot pegs shredded boots and pants. It was accessorizing with a death wish. The origin story is murky, but probably involves someone watching too many post-apocalyptic movies. The Road Warrior aesthetic seemed cool in theory. In practice, it made you look like you raided a Hot Topic clearance sale. The spikes were usually cheap chrome-plated plastic. They'd break off, rust, or fade within months. Your badass bike quickly looked like a porcupine with mange. Insurance companies weren't fans. Some refused coverage for bikes with spike modifications. Others charged higher premiums. Liability was a real concern. If your spiked accessories injured someone, even in a minor parking lot bump, lawsuits followed. Lawyers loved spike-covered bikes. They were rolling evidence of negligence. The installation process was surprisingly complex for something so stupid. Removing stock parts, threading in spike accessories, hoping they didn't vibrate loose, using thread locker on everything, then realizing you couldn't lean your bike against anything without causing damage. Parking became an adventure in avoiding property damage claims. The social stigma was real. Other riders mocked spike enthusiasts mercilessly. You couldn't participate in group rides without hearing jokes. Bike nights became roast sessions. The spikes screamed trying too hard, louder than straight pipes at 3 a.m. It was the motorcycle equivalent of a barbed wire tattoo around your bicep. Dated and embarrassing. Even the custom shops that sold this stuff knew it was ridiculous. They'd push spike accessories on new riders who didn't know better, mark up cheap Chinese parts by 300%, laugh all the way to the bank while creating rolling safety hazards. It was profitable stupidity at its finest. The trend died as personal injury lawsuits piled up and riders grew up. Modern motorcycles embrace smooth, functional design. Edges are rounded for safety, materials are chosen for performance, not intimidation. The spike phase is remembered as a time when adolescent fantasy overruled adult judgment. Those spiked accessories now hide in shame drawers. Too embarrassing to display, too expensive to throw away. Number 3, loud straight pipes. Loud pipes save lives was the battle cry. The reality, loud pipes annoyed everyone and saved nothing. The straight pipe epidemic turned motorcycles into rolling noise violations. No baffles, no mufflers, no consideration for anyone within a 3-block radius. Just pure, unfiltered noise pollution masquerading as a safety feature. The installation was simple, which explained its popularity. Remove stock exhaust. Install straight pipes. Instant attention. The wrong kind of attention, but attention nonetheless. Your motorcycle went from neighbor-friendly to neighborhood menace in 30 minutes. Property values dropped. Dogs barked. Babies cried. But hey, everyone knew you were coming from 2 miles away. The performance claims were largely fantasy. Yes, removing restrictions increased exhaust flow, but without proper tuning, most bikes ran worse. Lean conditions. Lost low-end torque. Decreased fuel economy. The only thing that definitely increased was the noise. And the number of people who hated motorcyclists. Thanks for that, by the way. Setting off car alarms became a twisted badge of honor. Riders would brag about how many alarms they triggered on their commute, like it was an achievement instead of a public nuisance. Parking garages became echo chambers of obnoxiousness. Tunnels turned into amplifiers for attention-seeking behavior. It was acoustic terrorism with a license plate. The safety argument fell apart under scrutiny. Sound travels behind you, not in front where the danger usually comes from. By the time a driver heard your straight pipes, you were already past them. Plus, modern cars have excellent sound insulation. Drivers listening to music with windows up couldn't hear you anyway. The only people who definitely heard you were pedestrians who weren't threats to begin with. Law enforcement cracked down hard, noise ordinances were strengthened, fines increased. Some cities banned motorcycles from certain areas entirely, all because some riders couldn't understand the difference between being heard and being obnoxious. The few ruined it for the many, as usual. The straight pipe era ended as riders realized they were becoming pariahs. Motorcycle-friendly businesses started banning loud bikes. Group rides excluded straight pipe riders. The social cost exceeded any imaginary benefit. Modern exhausts offer performance gains without alienating entire communities. They're engineering marvels that boost power while maintaining civility. Today, straight pipes are associated with immaturity and inconsideration. They're the motorcycle equivalent of a teenager's boom car. All noise, no class. Those straight pipes now rust in garages, monuments to a time when being loud was confused with being cool. Spoiler, it never was. Number 2, skull-themed. Everything the skull phase was motorcycle culture's goth period, and like most goth phases, it's embarrassing in retrospect. Skull gas caps, skull mirrors, skull headlights, skull turn signals, skull horn covers. If a part existed, someone made a skull version of it. It was like the Grim Reaper opened a motorcycle accessory catalog. The aesthetic was supposed to be intimidating, dangerous, rebellious. Instead, it looked like a 13-year-old's notebook doodles came to life. The skulls were usually poorly designed, cartoonish, more silly than scary. Chrome skulls with red LED eyes were particularly awful, like a Halloween decoration that forgot October ended. The quality was universally terrible. These weren't handcrafted artisan pieces, they were mass-produced in factories that also made novelty keychains. The chrome flaked off, the plastic cracked, the LEDs died. Within months, your scary skull accessories looked like they needed dental work. Missing teeth, crooked jaws. It was death imagery, dying. Harley-Davidson riders were the worst offenders. Every other bike had skull derby covers, skull air cleaner covers, skull axle covers. It reached the point where finding a Harley without skulls was like finding a unicorn. A chrome unicorn, probably also shaped like a skull. The Milwaukee factory must have had a dedicated skull department. The combinations got increasingly absurd. Flaming skulls, winged skulls, patriotic skulls wearing American flag bandanas, skull families with little baby skulls. It was death imagery gone domestic. The Grim Reaper settling down with a mortgage and 2.5 skull children. The edge was completely dulled by oversaturation. Passengers suffered the most. Skull backrests, skull foot pegs. Imagine being a date on a motorcycle covered in death imagery. Don't worry, the skulls are just decorative, you'd explain. Right. Nothing says safe ride home like sitting on a seat decorated with human remains imagery. It was a rolling red flag. The market was flooded with skull garbage. Every motorcycle shop had an entire wall of skull accessories. Skull valve caps for $3, skull shift knobs for $50, skull exhaust tips for $300. The markup was criminal, which was ironic given the outlaw image skulls were supposed to project. Real outlaws don't shop at retail. The trend finally died when riders realized skulls had become a cliche. Every dentist with a weekend Harley had skull accessories. The rebellion was mass-produced. The danger was decorative. Modern riders prefer subtle personalization over obvious death imagery. The skull phase is remembered as a time when trying to look tough made you look like you were trying too hard. Those skull accessories now hide in boxes, too invested to throw away, too embarrassing to install. Number 1. Hyper-stretched choppers. And here we are, the number 1 forgotten motorcycle trend that looks absolutely stupid today. Hyper-stretched choppers. The final evolution of form completely abandoning function, front wheels so far forward they were in tomorrow, rake angles that defied physics, turning radii measured in city blocks. These weren't motorcycles. They were two-wheeled limousines designed by someone who hated corners. The Orange County Choppers era shoulders much of the blame. Every episode featured increasingly ridiculous builds, longer, lower, more stretched, more chrome, more impossible to ride. But people watched, and people wanted their own. Local shops started, building knockoffs, each one worse than the last. It was an arms race, if arms were 40 foot long and completely useless. The riding position was torture. Arms stretched forward, back arched, legs spread wide. It was like doing yoga while trying to control 200 horsepower. After 20 minutes, riders needed chiropractors. After an hour, they needed new spines. Long-distance touring was impossible. These bikes were built for showing, not going. Steering geometry was a suggestion at best. The extreme rake angles meant the front wheel wanted to flop side to side. Holding a straight line required constant muscle input. Low-speed maneuvering was impossible. Parking lots became obstacle courses. U-turns were 3-act plays. Riders had to plan routes like truckers, avoiding anything requiring actual steering. The build costs were astronomical. Custom frames, custom tanks, custom everything because nothing stock would fit. $50,000, $75,000. Some builds exceeded 6 figures. For a motorcycle that handled worse than a shopping cart with a broken wheel. It was conspicuous consumption at its most conspicuous. Storage was another nightmare. These bikes were too long for standard garages, too wide for normal parking spaces, too tall for some underpasses. Trailers needed extensions, truck beds couldn't contain them. Moving them required planning usually reserved for transporting carnival rides, which was appropriate given how ridiculous they looked. The TV shows that popularized them eventually showed their limitations. Arguments about unrideable bikes. Customers returning builds, the bikes gathering dust in showrooms. The reality was setting in. These weren't motorcycles, they were rolling sculptures. Art pieces that happened to have engines, expensive garage decorations. The death of hyper-stretched choppers was swift and merciless. The 2008 recession killed the custom market. Gas prices soared. Practicality mattered again. Riders wanted motorcycles that actually worked as motorcycles. The chopper shops closed one by one. The TV shows got canceled. The stretched choppers became cautionary tales. Modern custom bikes celebrate engineering and performance. Builders focus on improving the riding experience, not destroying it. The hyper-stretched chopper era is remembered as peak excess, when more was never enough, when longer was always better, when common sense was optional equipment. Those stretched choppers now rot in storage units. too expensive to maintain, too impractical to ride, too embarrassing to admit you owned. And there you have it, that's 10 forgotten motorcycle trends that look absolutely ridiculous today. From chrome obsession to choppers that couldn't turn, we've covered the full spectrum of motorcycle mistakes. Which of these trends did you fall for? Come on, we know at least one of these got you. Drop a comment below and confess your motorcycle sins. There's no judgment here. Well, maybe a little judgment. But it's all in good fun. If you enjoyed this ride through motorcycle history's Hall of Shame, smash that like button and subscribe for more two-wheeled content. We've got plenty more embarrassing trends to explore. Trust me, we've only scratched the chrome-plated surface. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and the questionable modifications in the past where they belong.